Hi everybody, I wanted to give you some initial feedback on the Learner Analysis Project Part 1. I've graded about 40% of your blogs so far, but I wanted to just kind of give you some feedback before I complete grading. First, I wanted to remind you that once you graduate and have your own class, you're not going to have the same luxury that you do right now in terms of having the opportunity to get to know one student really, really well. You'll have a full class or multiple classes, and so really enjoy this opportunity to get to know one student. Enjoy the time, the opportunity to interview the student and the parents. Again, this is a one-time experience that you're not going to be able to have again once you have 25 kids in your class or multiple classes with 20 kids in each one. So enjoy this and learn all you can from the experience. Moving forward, I wanted to talk a little bit about your strength-based or asset-based perspective of your student. Many of you did this, and I really appreciate the fact that you talked a lot about, what the students can do, what they like to do. So I was really pleased with most of you in terms of your attention to students' strengths and interest. It's really critical. As teachers, we tend to focus on what students cannot do versus what they can do. And the more that we focus on students' strengths, we can learn to incorporate the student's strengths and interests to address the areas of weakness or challenge. I really learned a lot about this when I got my master's degree in gifted education. It really challenged me to start thinking about how we see students and how we perceive students based on our own training. So I really want you to continue to focus on students' strengths, and you'll learn ways to use their strengths and their interests to address the areas where they need remediation. Regarding your blogs, most of you did a really nice job on part 1, and I'm looking forward to you adding more detail for part 2. Please check the assignments because many of you gave me a link that I couldn't seem to open with your blog. So try again, check your settings on your blog site to make sure that you can share the link with anybody without a password or that kind of thing, because I wasn't able to get onto several of them. I appreciate that most of you included the photos like I asked. The pictures of your classroom and the school really helped me see the context of where you are, so please keep including those photos. Many of you also included photos of your field experience notebook, which also helped me. So I tend to be very visual, so that really helps. Please make sure that you check your spelling and grammar on your blog site. I know that this seems a little bit more informal, but I really need you to make sure that you're checking that before you submit your blog link. We spent a lot of time in the first weeks talking about person first language, and most of you, kept to those principles. I do want to remind you too that person first does not just apply to disability. It also applies to student socioeconomic status. So for example, several of you talked about your student being free and reduced. Well, the student is not free and reduced. The student qualifies for free and reduced price meals because they live in poverty or they live in a low-income community. So students are not free and reduced. They qualify for free and reduced price meals. So please keep that in mind and make those corrections on your blog site. I want to remind you to reference back to the document that explains the anchor experience so that you can make sure that you're including all the components as we move forward. So obviously some of you were struggling with finding a student, so I'm not expecting you to have all of the information that I initially outlined for phase 1 or part 1 of the project, but make sure that you're constantly looking at that document as you add to your blog so that by the time you do part 3, you will have covered all the material that's required. Now that we're moving towards part 2 of your learner analysis project, It's important that once you know that your student has been identified as a student with disabilities and therefore qualifies for an IEP and special education services, you need to learn about what the student's disability label is and what those learner characteristics typically might be. We're about to move into the second part of the course where we really start focusing on learner characteristics. But for example, if your student has been identified as having a learning disability, look back to your textbook and read the chapter on learning disabilities. Or start doing some research. If you need my help, let me know, or let Nicole know, and we can find you a good source that will help you better understand learning disabilities. So it's going to be important for you to start understanding a little bit about the disability label that your students might have. And then you can add that to your blog, so you can cite your source and let us know what you've learned about a student with Asperger's or a student with a learning disability. I want to remind you too that this project is really a recursive process. So you've got some initial information for part 1, and now you're going to add some more information. You're going to keep adding to your blog. Don't wait until the day that the link is due on Canvas. You can keep adding to your blog throughout the semester. I want you to, like I said earlier, look back at the document, make sure that you're including all that information. The last part of your learner analysis project is going to be a digital story, and I've put together a sample for you so that you can see what your final product will look like. Essentially, what you're going to be doing is exactly what I'm doing now. You're going to create a slideshow, talk about what the content of each slide, what photographs you have on each slide, and you're going to record your screen and your voice while you're doing it. And I'll give you links to several free screen capture applications that you can use for this. That's about it. I just wanted to give you some initial feedback, let you know that I think you're doing a great job. I know that several of you had some problems initially finding a student, and several of you are still working on that. But I'm sure that by now, or certainly by the end of this week, those issues will be resolved. I've had lots of conversations with your clinical teachers at your site schools. So I think that we've moved past that initial bump in the road, and I look forward to seeing part 2 and part 3 of your final product. Thanks.